So I got up this morning and wandered around the lake and took some architectural photography, as many of you probably do, whether you're traveling or whether you're just wandering around taking artistic pictures or doing a job that you're being paid for. The idea of being able to look at these images in a coffee shop and get them off to my client, or just if I'm wandering around Europe and taking pictures and being able to see what I'm shooting and post it to Instagram or put it on Facebook, is an amazing thing. So we're going to take the images that I've just shot and we're going to go to a coffee shop and sit down and look at them on the iPad, and we're going to broadcast them to the world before I get home. And that's the important thing about photography, is if you're not sharing it, there's no point in taking it. So get out there and share, and we're going to show you how to do that with all of Adobe's mobile apps. So we just finished taking a whole bunch of photos this morning at the lake, and we are now at the coffee shop. Well, we're not really at the coffee shop. We're actually in my studio, but I do have a coffee mug. Anytime you see this coffee mug, it means that we have magically transported ourselves into a different place so that you can see that this can be done anywhere. It doesn't have to be done at your home, and it doesn't have to be done at the office. In fact, the beauty of the system that we're going to show you is that you can photograph with an actual camera rather than taking an extra picture with your iPhone. You can actually photograph with your camera, get an amazing photograph, and take that amazing photograph, work on it inside of Lightroom in its full raw file state, and share that image off to your friends or on Instagram or anywhere you want to share it immediately after taking the picture. That is the beauty of Lightroom in the cloud, Lightroom CC. They used to call it Lightroom Mobile, now it's Lightroom CC on your mobile device. So we're going to show you how to import those images into your iPhone or your iPad or your mobile device, and we're going to show you how to work on them inside of Lightroom. So let's start that now. The first thing you need is your camera. You actually don't need your camera. If you would like, you could also use a USB card reader and leave your camera in the bag, but this is a really slow method, so I keep it around just in case, but not my favorite method for importing. My favorite method for importing is using a USB dongle. So this dongle here attaches to the iPad through the lightning cable, and then there's a USB 3 port here, because I have a camera that's USB 3, so that speeds up the transfer of the files. It also has a little power plug right here, just in case you want to also power your iPad. Let's say you're going to be working on it for hours and hours and hours, and you want to make sure that it doesn't die in the process. You can go ahead and plug it in while you're surfing your camera. So I'm going to plug this in with a USB 3 cable, and then this is going to go into my camera here. Make sure the camera is on, and then I just need to plug this into either my phone or into my iPad. Now, my camera bag, which is made by Think Tank, can carry a lot of stuff. It can carry up to 2 bodies, 2 lenses, a drone, and 3 flashes. Plus, it can also carry my iPad. So, I'm going to take my iPad out, turn it on, and I'm going to show you what's happening here because I can't screen capture this for you because I'm going to be plugging in a dongle. So we're going to take the dongle here and plug it into the iPad. When we do that, the resident import program is what's going to pop up. And then we need to import those images onto the actual device. And then once they're in the device, Lightroom will take over and pull those in as long as we have the auto import feature on. So let's start by clicking or plugging this in. And when we do, it's going to pop up and you can see all the squares there, but you'll notice a problem here. And the problem is that you've got all these squares but no images. It clearly sees there's something there. The problem is that my camera has 2 cards in it. And for some reason, the iPad, the iOS, doesn't like dealing with the 2 cards. I don't know why. It may be a power issue, it may be that it's just 2 cards and it doesn't know which one to use. But the key is, go ahead and turn it off and just pull out one of the cards. Now I shoot the same raw file to both cards as a backup strategy. So I'm just going to pull out either one, doesn't matter. I'm pulling out the SD card. There's a CF card still in there. And now that I only have one card in there, it apparently is fine with doing it. So now I'm going to turn this back on, and when I turn it back on, you see that the images roll in. So just if you have that issue, if you just see white squares, or if you plug it in and nothing happens, or it's all blank, consider the fact that you might have two cards. Pull one of the cards, then it should work just fine. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to tell it to import all, but you could just go through and check mark the ones that you want to import, but I'm going to import all of them. So I'm going to, not just the selected, but all of them. And I'm going to go ahead and import them all. And so as I import them, it's going to put a little green checkbox next to the ones that have been imported. So now I just have to sit back and relax and wait for those. Drink whatever's in your mug, and then we'll be right back once it's done importing. So they are now imported into the iPad, and you can either keep the images on the card or discard them. You don't want to delete those images. Do not delete the images on your card. It allows you to do it, but don't do it, because you want that copy. So if I'm traveling in Italy, I want to have all of my cards throughout the entire travels, and then I also want them here in my iPad so I can work on them and also have an extra copy of them. And then I also want them to then be shipped up to the cloud, and that's one of the values of Lightroom CC, is that it's actually delivering the images from your mobile device up to the Creative Cloud, which means that now you have a third copy of those images, and when it starts to deliver those down to your computer at home, you now have 4 copies of it. So you just keep increasing the number of copies that you have of that one file. So make sure you keep the original file on your card. Just press the little keep button, and that's it. We're done importing. Now we get to go into Lightroom. The reason we came back to the studio instead of actually working at the local coffee shop is simply because I needed to be able to screen record so that I can show you what I'm doing in a better way on the iPad. So we're here at the studio and pretending it's coffee shop. Remember, the coffee mug is present, so we are no longer in the studio. But I want to show you first Lightroom and how things work in there. And then once we finish working inside of Lightroom, and remember, whether you're on an iPad or an iPhone, doesn't really matter because it's all pretty much the same. It's going to look very similar. It might be a little bit different here and there, but it's very, very, very similar. So we're going to show you how to work inside of Lightroom first, and then once we've done that, then we'll branch out to some of the other applications that Adobe provides. You'll notice that when you go into Lightroom itself and click on the All Photos, and let me turn on my Show Touches here, so that you can see that little red dot you'll see is telling you where I'm touching the screen. I'm going to click on All Photos, and when I go to the All Photos, you're going to see images start. You see these images coming in right here? These are the images that we imported into our iPad originally through the importing dialog box that is native to the operating system. Because I have certain preferences set up, which I'll show you in a second, it allows me to auto add anything that has been added to my camera roll on my device. So I'm going to show you those preferences right now. So if you go and touch this Lightroom logo at the top, you'll see all of your preferences right here. So the preference that I want to work at or look at specifically is in general. And you'll see that I have auto add photos, I have auto add videos, I can also add my copyright. I can tell it on raw images, go ahead and add the profile correction itself. Also, I'm showing touches, and I can change this to a left-handed editing situation as well. So there's a lot of specific settings that you might want to look at here. Also, I want you to look at this cloud storage and sync. So if you click on that, you can see use cellular data is on. That's because I have an unlimited cellular plan. If you have a data limit on your cellular plan, make sure that you turn that off. Also, you can only download smart previews. So if you turn that on, then if you are using your cellular data, it only downloads smart previews from other files that are in the cloud, as opposed to the entire full raw file. We can also tell it when we're charging, don't let this thing sleep. There are a lot of little settings here, like for instance, local storage tells you how much you're using, and you can also clear the cache. So if you're having weird issues, you might consider clearing the cache. Your sharing options are here. It'll tell you, do you want to include your copyright? I can also customize that as a watermark and tell it where I want to put that. So I can change the opacity of my watermark, the size of my watermark, and the offset. The only thing I can't do right now is actually put a logo as a watermark, which is unfortunate because all it allows me to do is put my copyright there, which is a little lame. But I'm not going to put that on there. Also, metadata. If you include the metadata, then all the information about your photos will go inside the JPEG that's being delivered online. So for instance, caption data, the camera information about like what shutter speed and aperture you're using, all those kind of things are going to be recorded into the JPEG that gets sent online. The one thing I don't want to include is this, the location information. If you include the location information, you are sharing the place that the photograph was taken. So beware. If you're taking photographs and you have GPS enabled on your camera and you're taking pictures of your family at home or someone else's family at their home or something like that, and you don't want people to know where that is so that they know where to come get the people that you're showing, just be aware. So it's important to be aware that your location information is shared only when you want it to be shared. Let's see if there's any other settings that we need to look at. That's it. So it's a pretty simple set of options, but we've pretty much gone through all of them. I'm going to show you a little bit more of a tour. If you look here, you've got all your photos. That means everything that's inside of Lightroom Mobile is right there. So you can click on it and it will show you all images. So it just goes through every image that you have inside of your collections here on Lightroom Mobile. Down below that are all of what we call albums. So your albums here can either be folders that have albums in them, or they can be actual albums. And you can create an album or a folder by clicking on this little plus button right over here. So just click on that plus button and you can either create an album or create a folder and in which to put albums so that you can organize things a little bit better. You can also sort this entire list either by the date or photo count or whether or not they're stored locally. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. You can also search your images right here. So I can type in a search and find images inside of my entire collection of images. We'll talk a little bit more about searching in a minute as well. Then we also have this little cloud, and you'll notice right now that it has dots moving to the side. It's blinking. That means that it's in the process of uploading images at the moment. So when you're uploading images or downloading images, that little cloud will be active and those dots will be moving. So if I click on it, I can see the activity that's happening. There are 74 pending images to be uploaded at 46%. So it's 46% done with whatever it's doing. I can also pause the syncing if I want to. Now, if I go to any of these albums or folders, I can see a little ellipse right there, dot, dot, dot right there. If I click on that, I get a drop-down menu of all the different things I can do. So I can add photos just to that specific album. I can enable auto add. So remember, here inside of our preferences, in our general settings, we have auto add photos enabled. So that's on in Lightroom in general, but that means that all the images that go into your camera roll are going to be going to the All Photos folder inside of Lightroom on your iPad. But if you want to specifically target them in some place, like you could have a folder or an album called New Photos, or if you're traveling through Italy, go ahead and make a folder or an album called Italy, and then enable the auto add to that folder, and anytime an image comes in while you're there, it's automatically going to be routed to that album itself. It's going to all the general photos because that's everything, but then it's being routed to that album so that you can find it easier. So you just simply click on that little dot, and you just click on Enable Auto Add, and then any image that comes into your iPad is automatically going to be delivered into Lightroom and then also into that specific album. You can also tell it to store this particular album locally, which means that if the images aren't resident here, now the images that we just imported are resident inside of Lightroom. It's already that way. So they're the full file, what is that? 30 megapixel file is there. But if you have images that are online that say you delivered from Lightroom or something like that, those images are going to want to come down here as smart previews or as little preview, or just as little JPEG previews. But if you say store locally, it will bring whatever's in the cloud down here. Now remember, you have a preference here in the preferences in cloud storage and sync that allows it to only download the smart previews. If that's enabled, even if the full image is in the cloud, it will only bring in the smart preview, but it will still be a smart preview on your device. It won't have to look to the cloud. That means you could work on it in an airplane. So if you decide I want to work on a specific folder of images or a specific album of images when you're on an airplane, or when you know you're not going to be around Wi-Fi, or when you know that the Wi-Fi is going to be slow, or that your cell service is going to be spotty, like you're camping or whatever, then you want to, prior to leaving your Wi-Fi network, you just want to click on that dot and tell it to store them locally. If you do that, then you'll be able to work on them, and they'll literally be just looking at what's on your iPad, and you won't have to worry about connecting to the cloud. You also have the ability to share web galleries, which we'll talk about later. You can rename that specific album. You can move the album to another folder. You can clear the cache on that particular album. You can delete that album, or you can just present that album as a slideshow for someone right there from that main page. So those are the options that you have inside of your albums drop-down menu. Now if you go to the folder drop-down menu, you'll see that it's a smaller set of options. You can add albums to that, you can rename it, and you can move it. That's about it. So less options for a folder than an album. So remember, this is a folder up here, and this is an album right here. Notice that there are some little icons also below the name of the album. If you look here, you'll see that there are 11 images that have no flags. You'll see that there are 0 that have pick flag, and there are 0 that have the reject flag. And you can see that all throughout. I've got 14 picked ones in this album. I've got 18 picked ones in this album. I don't see any rejects here because, oh, there's a rejected one right there in the character photo shoot. So that just gives you an idea of how many images are picked in a particular place, just more information. Okay, so now that we have given you an introduction to the organizational area, I'm going to click on All Photos, and we're going to go up here to the ellipses up on the right hand corner and click on that. And notice that I can add to, or I can delete images, or I can add photos directly to here. So if I clicked on this, it would ask me where I want to add them from. I can sort them, I can change the view from a grid view to a segmented view. which is more based on dates. So you can see 2018, 2017, 2016. I prefer the flat view because I can see more images. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell these to be added to a particular album. So I'm going to hit add to, and then it's just going to ask me to go through and select the images I want to add. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of clicking and spraying across all these images so that I can select all of these, and I want them to go to a particular album that I created in honor of my travel over to the lake. So I've gotten them all selected, and then I'm going to click on the little arrow on the top right hand corner, and I'm going to choose the album that I want to add them to. And so I'm looking for T for Tempe Town Lake Photos. So I'm clicking on that and I hit add. So now those images are still in the all photos. They still exist there. But they also exist inside of this Tempe Town Lake Photos. So now all of those are collected into one area for me to look at. Okay, so now that I have that, it's time to start playing with the images and looking at the images. So what I'm going to do is initially, I'm probably not going to work on all of my photos inside of my iPad because it's a lot slower than working on them on a computer with, you know, the power of the computer and with the abilities that Lightroom Classic has and even the abilities that Lightroom CC has. Like, there are so many better options to working on an iPad, but because I'm at a coffee shop and I'm traveling, this is the best way for me to work on an image and get it out, share it while I'm out on the road. So I'm going to look through and just find an image that I think looks very usable for right now, that I think would work really well to share. So I'm looking, and I think I like this one might work. Okay, so what I did is I chose an image that looked like it had all of the data that I wanted. So I was kind of moving because I might want to do an HDR of something, but I was moving my exposure up and down about a stop each way to make sure that I got all of the information I needed. And I'm looking at the histogram here, and I see that the histogram shows me I've got all of the data that I need. So even over here in this bright area right here, I've got the data that I need. It's not blown out. I think I can work with this file. So this would be a good place for us to start and play with this file. So the first thing I want to do is introduce you to the flagging and starring. So if instead of being up here in the top right hand corner right here where it shows the sliders, that's the adjustment area. What I want to do is be down in the star area, and if I flick upwards, then it stars. If I flick upwards on the left hand side, it stars on the left hand side, and it flags up and down on the right hand side. So depending on which thumb I'm using or what side of the screen I'm using, it will either flag or it will star. So that's how we flag and star. We can also click down here and star differently here too. So I can click on 5 stars and it just 5 stars. I can reject it, I can pick it. The one thing I notice is that here, if I zoom in, see I've got like a little, what is that guy? He's riding a surfboard. What do they call that? Paddle boarding or whatever. So anyway, I kind of like it. I'm going to leave it. So I like the paddle boarding guy. I like the little bit of blur. It's kind of cool. So I'm going to leave it. And I've starred this, say, a 3-star image. Now also, I can go to the info panel and learn more about the image. I can see that there's that it's a raw image. I can add a title to it. I can add a caption to it. So all of these things are going to be useful when you're sending them to Instagram or to your blog or something like that. Those titles and captions can actually be used in order to describe that file. So make sure that you go ahead and add titles and captions so that you have all that information in the file. You can also keyword. So I can add keywords to this. So I can click on there and add keywords like lake, or I can add paddle board and Okay, so I added paddleboard as a keyword because maybe I want to look for all images where I have a paddle border in the images. There are other keywords that I would use like building and lake and sunrise and things like that as well, but I'm going to show you a different way to search as well, even without keywords, which I think you'll enjoy quite a bit. So let's actually go back and look at that now. So if I wanted to then go find those images that I had just shot, but I had no idea where they were, I can simply click on this spotlight option and find images. So watch what happens when I type in lake and hit search. Images of lakes start appearing, and not all of them have lake in their keywords. And that's because Lightroom is connected to the cloud. Because all of my images are on the cloud as well, there's something called Adobe Sensei. And Adobe Sensei is a machine learning computer in the cloud that is actually going through images and learning what's in those images based on all sorts of inputs that it's getting from billions of people and billions of photos. And so what's happening then is it's learning what a lake looks like, what a person looks like, what a girl looks like, what a boy looks like. And all of that information is then put into the learning system. And now when I start searching for something called lake, look at this. It found that Tempe Town Lake, but that has no keyword called lake on it. I did not enter a keyword lake. And yet it found it because it knows what a lake looks like. This is why having Lightroom on your iPad, Lightroom CC, is so useful, because it can find any of your images even if you haven't keyworded them. So keep that in mind the next time you've lost a file and you don't know where it is, and you know it's somewhere but you can't quite find it, you don't know when I shot it, that kind of thing. Make sure you just go to Adobe Sensei and have a Sensei look for it. And the way you can look for it is either in Lightroom on your mobile device or in Lightroom CC, the new version of Lightroom. Lightroom Classic isn't connected on the search to Sensei, and so you can't search for anything except for keywords inside of Lightroom Classic. But in Lightroom CC, the new version of Lightroom, you can actually search with Sensei's help for anything, and it will look visually through your images. And if you've keyworded them, then you get an extra bonus on that search, because not only will you have your keywords, but you'll also have Sensei looking visually through your images. So if you are looking for an image, that's one of the fastest ways to find it.